Hi, welcome to the Best Ever You Network and Your Life Sparkles. I'm Elizabeth Guarino here with Kris Fuller, and we're going to do a little video here about accountability. People have been talking about accountability to us, Kris, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. And so, I mean, we've had many conversations around this, and it's very easy to point fingers and look at other people. And we're going to do other videos, follow-up videos about accountability within your circle, whether it's colleagues or family or whatever environment you're in. But we thought that the first port of call would be to talk about how do you show accountability yourself? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it is going to come down to you can only do you. You can do what you're doing. You can't, as much as you want to influence or change or help or guide someone, there are things and strategies we're going to talk about in our next video. But today, how do you show accountability is our key focus. And we kind of broke it down into 4 critical statements.
Want me to read them?
We think, explain it. Yes, Elizabeth, hit it.
All right, own it, right? Address it. How are you contributing? And high personal standards. And one of the things before you keep going is I really love this, especially if we were talking earlier and you were like, own it if you spilled the milk. But if you haven't learned that, you might need this video because sometimes people let you get by without being accountable.
And I think that is one of the things we were talking about as well. Own it with the little things. Like, own it when you spilled the milk, own it when you made a mistake. And for me as well, like I sometimes am accountable to a fault. I know when I worked in the corporate world, if I had done a mistake or something that I knew my error, I'd be running to my boss and being like, I just want to give you a heads up. I did this like this. It didn't work out, but here's how I fixed it. And she's like, sometimes you just need to keep going. Like, if it isn't impacting me or the company or the business in a way and you've solved it, then I'm good. But I'm like, I just want you to know. And so you can be over accountable. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't, but I think that owning it at every level, whether it's little things, matters. And it really reflects on your character. And here's the thing about accountability too, is the more you show accountability, the easier it is to continue and to then be accountable for harder and bigger and more important things.
Plus, people trust and respect you more when you own it. I really like that phrase, that own it, kind of like all in, owning it, and then sort of adjusting from there if you need to be over accountable or not. But what do you think, before we keep going, what do you think is the opposite of owning it is? Like being accountable.
And so we talked about that. I think that there's 2 things to that. There's number 1, deniability, and number 2, passing the buck. So if someone is like, what happened here? And and you don't go, oh, I know what happened. And you just kind of shrink back and go quiet and go, I don't know. That's the deniability. But the other one is, and we talked about this in that customer service world. And let's say somebody phones your department and says, hi, I'm looking for help with tires and your flowers. And you go, not my department.
Click.
Yeah, it wasn't your department, but you could still, and we'll get into that. How are you contributing? That's what that question is about. So I think that the passing the buck, it wasn't me, it was so-and-so, or it isn't mine, I don't know, is a really way that you're not owning it, even if it seems like it's not up to you. There are things, so now let's move into address it, because there are things you can do to address something. And when somebody is maybe coming to you or in an interaction with you where accountability is key, even if you don't have the rights or the roles or responsibilities for it, there's a way you can handle the situation that you can say, okay, if it was something I'm accountable for, what can I do? I can listen, I can solve it, I can apologize, I can find solutions, I can work with you. But if it's outside of my bucket, I can still address it. I still can go, this isn't my department, but I can still help or guide or transfer or lead you in the right direction. And so addressing it, I think, is key. So owning it and saying, yeah, I did that mistake. That's part 1. But then part 2 is saying, now what is the subsequent step? Like, what needs to be done? And again, I listed some of those things. Like, is it an apology? Does it need to be fixed? Does it need to be corrected? Does it need
a different person involved, like a connection to, you're the connecting point in, but do you really need to be connected to somebody else to solve it or whatever? But I like what you said right there is, because there are 2 ways. If you think from a company standpoint, even, or a customer service standpoint, or how you are in your role there, what we just said is really important. Like if somebody calls in with a problem, it might be an emotionally charged problem. It might be, a ton of different things involved. And if you're the one answering and going, hello, not my problem, that's a problem. And so I think all of this, as we're going through them, this just sort of popped into mind with what we were talking about earlier, is how are you making people feel? Because
and that leads into huge. How are you contributing? And you can contribute. Are you contributing to further the problem, or are you contributing to solving the problem? And at any point along that line, you can be one of those two people. That's the question you have to ask yourself. So the main question we're talking about today is, how do you show accountability? How are you contributing to the situation that you're currently in? Whether or not it directly has something to do with you, like you were just saying, Elizabeth, that phone call that is misdirected. Are you going to continue to contribute to the problem and say, nope, not my business, not my deal? Or are you going to be the one that stops the buck and says,
digs
let me
deeper,
contribute to the solution
in
any small way, whether it's even just listening, like this happened, I'm not happy. It's not your department, but the first thing you can do is listen. And the second thing you can do is acknowledge the person and say, I'm really sorry that happened. Or I wish that didn't go like that for you. Or I hear that you're feeling not good about
compassion for other people. And because anytime somebody is calling you with something that's not quite right, applying that love and compassion to it is, you immediately, I like what we called it, sort of like that buffer zone kind of thing. You and I were like, that's kind of neat to, if somebody calls you and it's not quite a right fit for you to fix the problem or whatever, you still are acting like a buffer zone. Think of it like we were saying, think of it like a spinning circle, like your computer isn't working quite right or something. And how is it going to operate right? How's it going to get out of that spin? And you are in there.
And are you going to be the one that just keeps spinning it? Or are you like, let me stop the spinning, even if I don't have all the answers? And that's not what accountability is. It's not knowing all the answers, but it's just recognizing that whatever has happened, even if it is a little bit out of your control, but you're like, what, now that this is with me, whether it's a misguided phone call or a wrong department, or if it is the right department and it is directly with you, how are you going to contribute to that spinning wheel? How are you going to next
level it? It's that top-notch little added thing, because it's really easy to just be like, I'm getting paid, I answer my phone, not my problem, next. Or the excellence involved, the world-class level of accountability and responsibility and excellence rests, I think, like what you said, in that buffer zone. What are you going to do? Which is that next part.
Oh, totally. I was just going to say that ties into our fourth comment there, and that's high personal standards. And when we talk about high personal standards, that is you choosing to be accountable for you. Every situation you come into, it's going to make you a better person. If you already are incredibly accountable, the peace it brings when you just own stuff, address stuff, and you can get through. And once you start really being accountable, and if you already are, it's easier and easier to just continuously be accountable for harder and bigger things. And that high personal standard is such a huge thing in core values. And at Best Ever You, one of the 6 principles we talk about a lot frequently is number 1, your core values. What is at the core of you? What do you value? And accountability is one of those ones that, bar none, elevates you and raises your personal standards. People appreciate it. People see it and recognize it, and they admire it. And they should, because it is a wonderful quality.
And that's how you put the sparkle in. Truly, that's how you put the sparkle back in people's step, because you can be like calling all bummed out with something or needing help or whatever. And the right customer service puts the joy back in, puts that sparkle back in. And this is a way of doing that.
Yeah, it relates to your personal life too. We're talking about a business turn here, and we've talked about when we were talking behind the scenes, you and I, we've talked about businesses, we've talked about customer service, we've talked about education and corporate, all of the buckets that we have been involved in conversations with. But certainly it applies to your personal life too. And the people in your inner circles, friends, family, colleagues, spouses, children, they're going to have those same reactions and recognitions and admiration for you. And they're going to learn and see from you. And one of the things about that is what you put out and what you model, that matters too.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing worse than spilling something and saying, look what you made me do.
Yeah. Right.
I just am like, no.
Yeah. So in being accountable, how do you show accountability? We would love to hear your comments, as we always do. Do you feel that accountability is something that you excel at, or is it an opportunity for you? Is there sometimes, and in looking at that, owning it and address it, there are underlying currents of why somebody would not want to be accountable. And I'll use children as an example. If they've done something, what do they not want to say? They don't want to admit what they did, because why? They don't want to get in trouble. And that transfers into your adult life. You don't want to disappoint your boss. You don't want to disappoint your coach. You don't want to. And so it's easy to sort of want to tend to shy away and be like, oh no, I didn't do that. But it doesn't serve you in the long run.
Or on the flip side of that too, if you actually, it's really uncomfortable especially when you have a need to be liked, to hold other people accountable for wrongdoing. It's like, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you wonder, like, okay, what's the fallout for me expressing my feelings and holding accountability? And that there's a lot to accountability, isn't there? I love our conversation. So
point one is all about you. You own it. You address it. Consider yourself. Hold yourself to that high standard. And I was just saying, we'd love to hear from you. So please feel free to write us. You can reach Elizabeth and I on any of our social media platforms, or you can write to us at besteveryou.com. Of course, that's our main website. So accountability from us today for you. We hope you enjoyed our video, and we'll talk to you again real soon.